Let's explore autistic history and the Autism Wars. This is part 94 of a series. So I'm going to pick back up from an update that was titled A Day in Washington and published in May of 2000 by Jonathan Shaystack, co-founder of Cure Autism Now. This update describes the day in detail that this movie producer and his actor friends, Anthony Edwards and some others, were a part of in getting legislation support for autism, their autism agenda. So let's get right back to that. So it says here, then back to the anteroom of the Senate chamber to meet with Arlen Specter. Ooh, we're going to hear that name in the autism hearings in the future, I'm pretty sure. While Arlen has always been very helpful, this meeting did not go as well as we had hoped. In talking to his staff, we learned that he was recently hammered by ABC News reporter John Stossel, who did a piece about how stars come to DC, visit Arlen's committee, and get money for AIDS or diabetes or breast cancer, thus politicizing the NIH process. You mean autistics aren't the only ones that have issues with celebrities coming in to direct and dictate their healthcare options and future? Who knew? Shaystack writes, never mind that the NIH is already political, paralyzed by infighting, and has less civilian oversight than the Pentagon. Wow, movie producer is now an expert everywhere. In any event, Arlen ended the meeting by saying he would look at the bill carefully and by reminding us that he had always been helpful before. That is true, and if the bill makes it through authorization, we are almost certain that the Appropriation Committee will fund it. Money! Our final meeting was with Bill Arrakis. He was compassionate and swamped. And while a little nervous about singling autism out over all other diseases, ultimately I believe that he can be swayed. And then in all caps, bolded out letters, it says here, the key will be signing up every other member of his community. We are still working on the final count, but I believe that by the end of the day, we were up to over 25 senators and 110 representatives! Exclamation point. This is a tremendous accomplishment and one that would not have been possible without the incredible dedication of families and friends from Cure Autism Now, NAR, ASA, and other organizations across the country. All parent-founded autism organizations, by the way. But, he says here, we can't stop now. If you haven't already, please check out the rest of this site, which would be the cureautismnow.org site. It's still available in the Wayback Machine if you are so curious. Your friends and family can help get even more support from this legislation, and it gives a number if you have questions. It says, we'll be sure to keep you informed. Thanks, Jonathan Shaystack, co-founder of Cure Autism Now. So I shared some quotes from the testimony of Anthony Edwards in earlier videos, an overview of this era, but this testimony that was given September 14th, 1999, I'm going to share it with you in full so you can hear the message that Hollywood and this movie producer with parents that he gathered under his Cure Autism Now umbrella, what they were speaking to, what they were talking about, autistics without us, and what they were representing in legislation without us. Mind you, it's full of misinformation, tragedy narrative, and things that are just wow. So bear with me as we go through this. Now, this testimony in September 14th, 1999 by actor Anthony Edwards was in support of the Advancement in Pediatric Autism Research Act. Now, this didn't go through, but it did get rolled into the Children's Health Act of 2000. So it did come into being, it's just not right at this moment, later down the road. And while Anthony Edwards, I think, believed he was giving a voice to 400,000 autistics, or at least the ones that they thought existed at a time, we have much larger numbers, by the way. They had it so wrong. But it seems like he feels like he's giving a voice to us, when the reality is he's silencing us right there where we needed to be the most. And instead of autistic representation, we had Hollywood representation pushing the direction of autistic healthcare without us. So here's what he says. Because of ER, I have experienced something I believe you can all relate to. Being in a position where hundreds and hundreds of worthy causes attempt to solicit your support. By the way of this testimony, I think it will be clear as to why I have dedicated myself to this issue. Autism. I am speaking on behalf of the 400,000 families in the U.S., and in particular, for the hundreds of families I have come to know as I worked with Cure Autism Now Foundation over the past 2 years. Here are the statistics, the dry stuff that isn't supposed to make you cry. Autism affects at least 1 in 500 kids. That's more than multiple sclerosis or Down syndrome or cystic fibrosis. That's at least 400,000 people in the United States. It strikes children generally between their first and second birthdays. These kids will live as long as you or me, but their parents will not be experiencing slumber parties, graduations, and weddings in June. Half these kids will never learn to talk. Most will not marry or go to school. They will never live independently. Many will end up in institutions or group homes. We're not sure if there's a real epidemic. You hear that? Real epidemic. Yeah, legitimizing this nonsense. Or if it's better reporting. See, they always had the answer. They just didn't like the answer. So they didn't believe the answer because they wanted something else to be true. Right? So, but we do know that there are so many more families affected by autism than we realized. In California, where I'm from, the Department of Developmental Services reports a 263% increase in autism in the last 10 years. Every day in California, 4 new families are sitting around the kitchen table in a state of shock, having just got the diagnosis. This is how a mother I know put it. Sometime before her son's 2nd birthday, someone crept into her house and took her precious baby's mind and personality and left his bewildered body behind. If 1 in 500 kids were actually being abducted in the United States, it would be a national emergency, and so should this be. And then he goes into more testimony after this point about why he's here that day. So I'm going to share the rest of this testimony in the next video. It's not easy to hear, it's not easy to speak, but it is our history. And the better we know it, the better we can prepare for a better future for all autistics going forward, and definitely improve our healthcare options, right?